Let us take a step further, and we then come to the real dominions of Narania. She is the cycle of the soul and enacts upon the spiritual plane of human existence a similar series of events to those of the Noros upon the mundane sphere of life. Hence, we can trace a perfect analogy between the motions of luminaries in space and the revolution of purely psychic entities within the idyllic sphere of man. Each year of life, the Earth in her orbit transits the point in space which she occupied at a person's birth. Or, in other words, the sun returns to the same sign and degree of the zodiac that he occupied in the horoscope. In this transit, the solar force renews the life energies of the soul and re-galvanizes them from the additional force. We are speaking spiritually, understand. These germs of new forces are virtues, powers, potencies, and deific attitudes of the great solar orb. They are spiritual ovums of seeds of human possibilities, and if consciously nourished and cherished, will evolve powers and states within the human soul, which corresponds in their action to our hidden spiritual attributes. If unnoticed, uncared for, they remain until other forces polarize them and then pass onward down their cycle. When the moon, in the course of her motion, arrives at the same place during each month, she impregnates these seeds and endows them with magnetic life. Therefore, in an occult sense, she confers upon humanity the powers and possibilities of magical forces. It is this lunisolar influx of Norania within the human constitution then that controls the real foundation and basis of spiritual development and occult power. Remember, these most important facts then and guided by your own spiritual intuitions in the matter, use this knowledge according to the light which nature has already given you, or which shall hereafter receive. We have revealed to you the mystery of Norania, have given you an outline sketch of its basis in nature and its philosophy in human evolution, as near as it is possible without leading you out of your safe path or bringing you nigh unto dangerous ground. For those who are ready to utilize this mystery, what we have here said will be plain and easy of the comprehension. For those who are not yet ready, rest assured, it is wiser to await until your spiritual nature is more highly developed. Chapter 8, Soul Knowledge, the Logos, or Book of Wisdom. Explanatory note. The Atama Bodha, or Book of Soul Knowledge, is copied from a free translation of a very ancient Sanskrit manuscript written upon palm leaves and cannot be obtained except in rare and isolated Buddhist convents in the remote parts of India and Tartary. It is therefore placed at the disposal of neophytes as a valuable manuscript of a unique and exceedingly rare work of great merit. T.H. Burgoyne, Private Secretary. Book 1, the Logos, or Book of Wisdom. The qualities cannot know the soul, divine ego, but the soul knows all qualities. Moksha. Know the divinity that is within you, that you may know the divine one, of which your soul is but a ray. Proculus. He who sees all things in the soul, and the soul in all things, does not slight anything. It is more refined than an atom, and cannot be approached by argumentation. The truly wise, knowing, and ubiquitous soul, which sees the wakeful and the profoundly sleeping states, do not mourn. The soul is pure because it does not participate in the qualities. It is distinct from the qualities because it is itself wisdom. From the Sanskrit work kata, know then that salvation is not attained by uttering mantras or by the burning of incense or observing thousands of fasts. Until the incarnated soul knows that he is divine, he cannot attain salvation. Mahana Ravana, Tantra. As is, as in a diamond magic mirror, one cannot see forms reflected, so a spirit with immature organs cannot attain knowledge. As in unripe fruit, sweet juice cannot be found, so is knowledge not found in an undeveloped organism. The knowledge of the divine element being in us is therefore the first requisite, and as we acquire that knowledge, we progress in the development of the inner life. And any protest against that knowledge shuts us out from the spiritual life. Yagnava Kaya. Atama Bara. 1. This book of soul knowledge is composed for those who have effaced their sins by penitence, who have attained the perfect tranquility, who have destroyed their passions, and who aspire to the final deliverance. 2. Of all means, there is but one, knowledge, that is efficacious for the obtaining of deliverance. Even as there is no cooking without fire, can one not arrive at final deliverance without knowledge? 3. For want of being opposed to it, action knows not repulse, ignorance, but knowledge dissipates ignorance, as light dissipates the darkness of heavy clouds. 4. Fettered and some wise by ignorance, but again becoming free when she is destroyed, Atma, spirit, or human soul, and Brahma, divine soul, becomes of itself resplendent of great light, as the sun upon disappearance of the clouds. 5. After the divine soul, Brahma, troubled by ignorance, has been purified by the existence or by the exercise of knowledge, the knowledge itself vanishes, diffuses, even as the grain kalaka in water. Note, kalaka is used in many parts of India to purify stagnant and brackish water. The natural purifiers are very valuable in the East, and the kalaka here referred to dissolves immediately when placed in water. Hence, the passage diffuses, even as the grain kalaka in water. The student is also here referred to as an interesting account of the sweetening of brackish waters in the 15th chapter of the book of Exodus. Quote, so Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out in the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. And when they came to Morah, they could not drink of the waters of Morah, for they were bitter. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, what shall we drink? And he, Moses, cried unto the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, which he had casted into the waters. They were made sweet, etc. Many kinds of plants will clarify water and make it sweet, the same as the oak cullings used in the waters of the land of La Grande. 6. Similar to the image of a dream, the world is continually troubled by love, by hate, and other passions. As long as the dream lasts, it appears to be real. But on awakening, it passes into non reality. 7. The phenomenal world appears as real, even as the oyster shell appears to be silver. As long as Brahma is not known, he that is above all things, indivisible. 8. All the varieties of being are comprised in the one being, veritable and intelligent, who was bound up with all. Circle 7, bound by all cords. That's what that reminds me of. All things bound by all cords. Eternal, all penetrating, even as gold is in all variety of ornaments. 9. Even as the air, director of the organs of sense, the master, susceptible of diverse attributes, appears as distinct by reason of their distinctions, but when these attributes are destroyed, latent, it virtually becomes one. 10. By virtue, all these diverse attributes, species, names, and different states are communicated to the spirit in the same wise as different colors are to the body. 11. The body formed of the combination of the elements to the number of 5: fire, earth, air, water, and vital breath, produced by the effect of action, energy, thus formed the seat of perception, of pleasure, and of pain. 12. The subtle body, astral body, which is not the issue of the 5 grosser elements, but which is unified with the 5 breaths of the life, with the faculty of interior comprehension, the manas, with intelligence, buddhi, and the 10 organs is the instrument of the perception of the interior senses. 13. The and beginning are indefinite, ignorance without beginning, undefined, is called the casual attribute, but which differs essentially from the triplicity of attributes, or the trinity of attributes, which is to be understood as spirit, Atmanan, Advadhavi. 14. In the union with the 5 envelopes, 5 rogas, the pure spirit or soul subsists as the nature of one or another, absolutely in the same wise as a crystal reflects the colors of the various matters, that are brought near it. 15. Strive by consecrating the thought, mind, to liberate the supreme soul, pure and free of the envelopes, elements to which she is united, that the body and the other, in the same wise as is sifted the grain from the chaff. That's a Circle 7 quote as well. Interesting. Are y'all catching these Circle 7 quotes? Right.
And then you said something about color.
Yeah. Yeah. So the principle is the same. It ain't, so, yeah, it just make it more apparent what Noble Drew Ali did with the Quran. He just made it just real plain. Yeah. if y'all know that Yahshua was 12 years old during, and then in the modern he's 33. And in the regular Bible, they talk about him as a 33-year-old man for the most part. So it kind of bridge. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's consistent with those missing books that people be talking about as missing. You know what I mean? Yeah, 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 yeah. Note, the elements here referred to are the same intelligent forces generated by the so-called four primary elements: fire, earth, air, and water, and may appropriately designate the elementals of the astral plane, who become active agents in the fiery circulus or astral zone of the third or fourth dimensions of space. They are soulless, semi-material, magnetic beings, and are the chief and in a great majority of cases, the only cause of the physical phenomena known to modern spiritualism. It is these elementals, and in fact, this astral plane, that constitutes the well-known dwellers on the threshold in occultism. 16. The soul, although it penetrates into all things, does not manifest itself in all places, but it becomes manifest in intelligence or thought, as the reflection on the surface of a mirror. 17. The spirit must be distinguished from the body, the organs of sense, the interior sense, and the intelligence, who has perfected his nature, in the same wise as a true king watches his attendants. Note, the divine spirit or ego, as also the divine soul, must not, under any circumstances, be confounded with the reason, mind, intelligent reason, etc., are but varied expressions of soul on the external plane, Islam, and do not exist at all within the pure realm of spirit proper. 18. As long as the organs of sense are in action, the spirit is apparently acting in the same wise as the moon appears to be in motion when the clouds pass by. What's this? 20. What's this Roman numeral? 17. Nah, that gotta be 19. Because the next one is XX, which would be 20, right? So 19. Having recourse to the vital force of the spirit, the body, the organs of sense, the interior comprehension, and the thoughts of mind accomplish their respective functions as men do their daily work by the light of the sun. 20. It is through absence of discernment that the living and intelligent spirit is attributed the qualities or actions of the body and the organs of sense, as there is attributed a blue color to the firmament. 21. Action and other qualities that belong to the attributes of the manus, interior comprehension, are placed in the spirit through ignorance only, even as the motion of the waves is supposed to be caused by the moon's reflection on the water. 22. Passions, desires, pleasures, and pain dwell in the human mind, and as long as it exists in reality. In the state of profound sleep, when it ceases to be, they, as will, are no more. They belong, therefore, to the intelligence, not to spirit, soul. 23. Even as clearness is the preeminent quality of the sun, heat of fire, also following in nature, the spirit essentially is life, beatitude, eternity, purity. 24. The living and the intelligent part of the spirit, Atman, and activity of intelligence are distinct things. When by ignorance they are identified, the people say, I know. 25. There is no change for spirit. There is not even knowledge for the intelligence. The soul, knowing all things in access, is subject to illusions, so far as to say, I act. Note, the one thing needful for all neophytes is to thoroughly realize the vast difference between the appearances and the reality. There is much that could be impressed as to the state which will enable one to distinguish between truth and appearance of truth. Know, then, that all things possessing form and weight are not what they seem, but are only external representatives of a more interior spiritual correspondence. The human ego, like the divine soul, possesses neither form nor weight. They are the pure formless emanations of Brahma. That which we may term soul is but the external expression of the interior soul, in itself invisible. 26. If he take himself for the individual soul, as by mistake, one takes a rope for a serpent. The spirit contracts a great fright, but when he comes to understand, I am not the soul, but the sovereign spirit, he is freed from all fear. 27. The spirit soul of itself causes to appear the organs of sense, and at their head, intelligence, mind, as a lamp illuminates a vase and other objects. But the spirit in itself, but the spirit in its real self is not illuminated by these inert things. 28. The spirit soul, whose condition of being is knowledge, desires not the knowledge of another on the subject of its own knowledge, in the same wise as a lamp giving its own light has no need for another lamp to be seen. Note, or in other words, having attained the absolute condition of the at the one moment, it cannot possibly be aided by any outside or external help, seeing that it is one with the Father. Now we get what that means. That symbolic phrase. 29. One having recognized the upadis or attributes without accepting saying, this is not, this is not, let him recognize the unity of the Supreme Spirit and of the soul by virtue of the great words, having rejected all the attributes of things temporal with such terms as it is not, it is not. Let him strive to discern the identity of God, Brahma, and of the soul, but absqueezed by the celebrated words of Holy Writ or Holy Command. Thou art he, this soul is Brahma, God, I am, he. 30. Whatever cleaves to the body is the product of ignorance. It is visible, it is perishable, as a bubble. But in that which has not such marks of distinction, let the pure being be recognized, saying to himself, I am Brahma. 31. Thus says the soul. To contain any difference from the body, I experience neither birth nor death, nor age, nor discrepitude, nor extinction, and am disconnected from the organs of sense. I have no point of attachment to their objects, even like a circle. When one comes to know the soul by the intelligence of Scripture, one arrives at the speculative science of the soul, which is herein resumed in 5 slokas. The first step in the way of life is reading the sacred books. The second is meditation, wherein the language of the soul is understood. Note, the language of the soul is not, in its strict sense, intuition, but is that one sole attribute of the spiritual intelligence, divine perception. Intuition can only be called the language of the soul upon the more external planes of manifested being. 32. Being freed from the manan, or mind sentiments, I do not experience pain, passion, hate, fear, love, or other passions or affections. I am that which is established by the precept of revelation, without breath, without manas, absolutely pure. 33. Of Brahma is born the breath of life, prana, the mind. All the organs of sense are air, the wind, light, water, and earth, nursing all that which exists. 34. I am without quality, without activity, external, without will, without impurity, without change, without form, forever liberated, perfectly pure, perfectly pure. 35. I am as the ether, penetrating all things, without and within. I am without imperfections, ever the same in all, pure in passions, immaculate, immovable. 36. He who is eternal, pure, free, one, entirely happy in the supreme happiness, without duality, undivided, veritable, real existence, science, the infinite, the supreme one, Brahma. I am he. Note, there is no such thing as sentiment recognized within the pale of pure occultism. Sentiment always creates for itself some grand ideal of an apparent reality, which is in itself is but maya, or illusion. Explanatory note. It must be borne in mind by the reader that the second part of the Book of Wisdom is in reality a commentary or explanation of the first book, and herein is set forth the actual secrets of the cosmos. The whole arcana of Hindu occultism is here laid bare of its arcane terms and its metaphysics, so bewildering to Western minds. It means the initiation of the soul, and as such, it must be considered wholly apart from any internal formula or ceremonial rite. Consequently, it corresponds mystically with the perfect at-one-ment of the early primitive Christians who taught that the kingdom of heaven, the religion of Brahma, was within. The full realization of this will surely bring unto the neophyte that peace of God which passeth all understanding, or the true nirvana of our Oriental brethren. T.H. Burgon. Book of Wisdom. 1. Such a conception, I am, Brahma himself, incessantly maintained dissipates the hallucinations born of ignorance, even as a valuable medicine drives out disease. Note, it is of great importance of neophytes to fully realize that the constant formalization of any idea will in due time, other conditions being fulfilled, through a process of psychic evolution, cause the subjective ideal to become an objective fact, or from the embryonic plane of the soul state to exist as a real entity, a veritable spiritual reality. This is the true secret of evolution, of the soul powers evolved by occult training, and which in due time produces the all-potent perfect man, the adept. Like I always say, you can simplify what they just talked about. If you have a thought in your mind, you go into the mill, you go into the post office tomorrow. That's a thought in your mind. Then you actually go to the post office. Now that's something that's verified. That's a fact. It's not just metaphysically in your personal mind. Now somebody else can see your thoughts manifested, right? 2, sitting in solitude, freeing from the passions, having completely mastered his senses, let a man picture to himself the spirit, the supreme one, the eternally infinite, without allowing his thoughts to be diverted. Note, solitary meditation is one of the means of success in the soul's search for Brahma. He who submits himself to the served discipline of the ancient ritual of training will be in the best condition to contemplate directly and without trouble the infinite being, one, indivisible. The philosopher will have no other thought. That is to say, his own intelligence will have a constant application to Brahma alone, but to nothing outside of that most holy interior plane. Read, work, learn, and inwardly digest the words in the New Testament. Retire, or quote, retire to thy closet secretly when alone in thy chamber, etc., to pray. This is the solitary meditation referred to by this ancient Hindu writing. And when alone in the secret communion within your own soul, bow thy head in reverence and oh before the radiant visitors from the world beyond. 3, considering the visible universe as annihilated in the spirit, let the man, pure in intelligence, contemplate continually the one spirit, soul, as he would the luminous ether. 4, this continual formation of the soul's ideal, which in its silent aspirations associates itself with the divine universal soul, enables it to attain the union with Brahma. 5, when such union is attained, the pure soul can fully realize its previous conceptions and thus participates in all the attributes of the infinite one. 6, then knowing the highest essence, he rejects all that is distinguished by name, by form, or otherwise, and he dwells firmly in the one, in he dwells firmly in the at one-ment with the self-existent, perfect, intelligent, and happy being. 7, there is not in the supreme being, soul, any distinction between the perceiver, the perception, and the object perceived, and his quality of the one being, intelligent and happy. He shines by his own light. 8. Thus, when the friction of meditation without cessation is made up upon the word of spirit, the flame which issues therefrom consumes all the combustible matter of ignorance. Note, the ancient sages have defined the recompense awarded to him who has contemplated. They have recourse to a comparison which frequently presents itself to the imagination of Hindu writers. Atma, or the spirit, is likened to the arani, a hard wood used for friction. A second arani, the manas or mind, is applied to the first. The friction of these two woods being made, the mind and spirit, continually by exercise of silent meditation, the knowledge of true science, which proceeds from it after the manner of a flame from friction, destroys completely the combustible portion of the wood of ignorance, even to its very roots, with all that which proceeds from it. Then the aspirant for perfect deliverance is confirmed in his royalty and finds that he has accomplished his duty. 9. When the previous ignorance has been dissipated by knowledge comparable to the light of dawn, then spirit itself manifests itself in a manner shining like the sun. 10. The spirit, always accessible, becomes as inaccessible as the consequence of ignorance. This being dissipated, it shines fully and as truly accessible in the same wise as jewels on a maiden's neck, though she may have forgotten them. 11. The spirit of life, principle of life. The undivided soul, the living of life, is attributed by error to the supreme being or Brahma. As in content, we attribute or liken the outward physical form of man to that of his creator. Note, again, it is necessary to say we must not confound the soul with the great spirit. Neither must we disquieet ourselves by trying to soon distinguish in oneself the soul, the principle of individual life, but be content to know oneself to be identical with the universe, with Brahma himself. 12. But once having seen the true nature of the spirit of life, this error disappears itself. 8. The knowledge that is born of comprehension of being having of himself his existence in reality destroys completely the ignorance that causes us to say, I am not, or that pertains to me. In the same manner that the light of the sun dissipates all darkness and uncertainty in the visible response of the sky. 14. The yogi, the possessor of a perfect discernment, contemplates all things as subsisting within himself. And thus, by the eye of knowledge, he discovers that all is but the one and the same, spirit or soul. Note, the ancient author wishes to say how the yogi sees without distinction in the spirit all that is perceived in the visible world with the character of diversity. All the world is the spirit. In fact, there exists nothing but spirit. It is similar to crockery plates, vessels, and other utensils, which are made of clay, no matter what their shape, color, and size may be. At the bottom, there is nothing but clay. He who was from force of vitality, the potent man, rejects the qualities of the anterior attributes, body, mind, etc., are on a higher plane, only the conceptions of ignorance. He becomes Brahma by reason of the essential nature of his interior formative being. Thus, he is perfectly happy, even as chrysalis becomes the butterfly. After having traversed the great ocean of illusion, after having destroyed in himself the evil genie of passion, of hate, and other vices, the yogi shines intimately, collected in tranquility or peace, and finds his joy in the soul. Renouncing all attachments to an external and fleeting happiness, satisfied with the happiness of the soul, the wise man is forever resplendent in the interior light, and similar to a lamp under a glass shade, does he himself protect. The Muni ascetic, although he submits to the attributes of the body, come comparable to the ether, not being soiled by the natural properties, should although he knows all comfort himself, as an ignorant man passing as wind, detached from all things, yet material. From the moment the attributes are destroyed, the Muni ascetic enters immediately into that which penetrates all things, as the water into water, and air into air, the fire into fire. The possession after which there is no other to desire. The felicity above which there is no greater felicity. The science above which there is no greater science. Let it be known, this is Brahma. There is no being within, without, above, or beyond the one being. All the interior, movable world is the spirit of the one, and the external world is the same soul. Nothing exists apart from the one, and this one is Brahma. The seen, object of vision, after which nothing more is desired to be seen, the existence in union of which there is no fresh birth possible, the knowledge above which there is no knowledge desired. Let it be known, this is Brahma. The being that fills all the intermediary, superior, and inferior religions, living intelligent, happy, without a second, duality, eternal, and one. Let it be known, this is Brahma. That which is designated in the books of the Vedanta under the mode of existence, rejecting all that is found for its own self, the imperishable, incessantly happy, the one. Let it be known, it is Brahma. Admitted to a portion of happiness belonging properly to the being incessantly happy, Brahma, and the other gods, gods of the vulgar masses, because at various degrees, partially happy. All things belong to him, the one. All activity depends on the one, intelligent. This is why Brahma is everywhere diffused as cream in the mass of milk. That which is neither bound nor gross, nor short nor tall, nor subject to birth, nor perishable, that which is without form, without quality, without color, without name. Let it be known. This is Brahma. He, Islam, he by whose splendor shines the sun and the stars, but who is not enlightened by their lightness, he by whom all things are illuminated. Let it be known. It is Brahma. Penetrating all himself alone from within and from without, illuminating the entire universe. Brahma shines from afar, even as the light radiant suns. Brahma has no similarity of appearance with the worlds, nor in reality there exists nothing but Brahma. Shall something produce itself external to him? It is nothing but a vain appearance, as a mirage that figures on the wastes of the desert. All that is seen, all that is heard, is not different from Brahma. And by a knowledge of the truth, this Brahma is contemplated as the existent intelligence, happy, indivisible being. The eye of science contemplates this living, intelligent, happy, all penetrating being. But the eye of ignorance knows not how to contemplate it. In the same way as a blind man knows not how to contemplate the very forms of external nature around him. The soul, illuminated by the sacred lore and other means of knowledge, warmed by the fire of science and purified, shines of itself with the brilliancy of gold 7 times purified in the furnace. The Atman spirit or divine soul, the sum of all knowledge, resting in the ether of the heart, drives away darkness, penetrates all, shines, and all is illuminated. This is the great completion of existence. It is the great and final deliverance from sin, from pain, and also from death. And when compared with vanities of this illusionary world, it is the pearl of great price, and happy indeed is he who becomes its possessor. He, therefore, who undertakes the pilgrimage of the soul that is within his own self. So you feel me? The pilgrimage is not just physically traveling to Mecca. That's dogmatic Islam. He who therefore undertakes the pilgrimage of the soul that is within his own self, without considering the state of the heavens or the country of the time, dissipates the cold and the heat, and attains unto the perpetual happiness, free from all impurity. This one, freed completely of works, becomes omniscient, all penetrating, and immortal. So, wait, is this a new chapter? So, okay, so we can stop right here. How y'all feel about that chapter?
Very informative.
You think
So they're saying they basically refer to the Most High back in the day as Brahma, or that's how they people saw God.
are people that were Hindustan?
Okay.
Yeah, Brahma.
Makes sense then.
And then some would be like Krishna, they'll refer to as the sun or the activating pioneer,
The meditation part is definitely key. Like solitude, tapping into yourself, that's the best way for you to connect with God or with one another. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing first. My mind is like mental, physical, and emotional. It's all in different ranks. So it's like, what you put in those 3 things form.
Uh-huh.
So when you have full control, like you might be like, okay, you get what I want, you feel how I want to feel.
Yeah.
Then you do what you need to do, you know what I mean? So that's when things start coming into fruition much faster.
Yeah.
The money important thing is happiness. It's not me see myself doing this and have that. It's about letting the universe give you the happiness in multiple forms.
Right.
So it's being in boxing, you know, it's all the red part of it.
Some of those being the keys that, as Verse 7 said, they gave the Indians some of the keys to hold. Like definitely some of those are practices that we use are just not too far off from the things we do. I'm interested in that green you were talking about. Said the one where those type of water speed using oak colors, but it's talking about the green, a lot of
Yeah.
like how would that work? That's some information right there. You got some stagnant water, you turn it into clean drinking water, and just using the green.
That's essentially turning it to alkaline water.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
Clean water, alkaline water.
but it's sweet though.
Turn water
So
into
it's like,
wine.
you know what I mean? Uh, trying to find more land. Right where I left off. Can everybody see the screen? Does it need to be enlarged? Y'all screen?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Let's see. How about that? Y'all good with that? Everybody can see that? Is it cool?
Yeah.
Tazamaji, y'all see the screen? Is it like is it readable? Nah,
Yeah, it's
not.
small. I mean, not the small part, but you have to read the big thing.
How about now?
It's not the small is not readable. You can make it a little bit, yeah, so it's gonna be good, yeah, kind of go a little bit. That's good, that's better.
They still can't see that.
I can see that. Perfect.
Cool. All right. All right, so we pretty much got a background on this. We've been reading Moral Land for the past month or so. Our brothers in the south of the Philippines are keeping the ancient traditions. The ones in the north part of the island think they Filipino, Christian, Roman Catholic. These people in the north have aid with the Spanish. They're allied with the Spanish. They're allied with the United States government to overthrow and continually penetrate south and eventually make the whole island under Christendom. So that's a small summary for the people on Zoom. Chapter 3, the Bates Agreement. The Sulu archipelago seems to have become the dumping ground for the Oriental world. Here, you find renegade Arabs, native Indian soldiers, for whom Sulu, like a Western mining camp of old, Sulu was filled of adventure. Did this just skip to something totally different?
Yeah.
For whom look like the same one. On May 24th, at almost the same time the Spanish were in the final stages of evacuating Sambonga, an army transport departed San Francisco, bound for the Manila, in addition to the new regulars. It carried prominent Civil War pedigree. One was Frederick Gant, the oldest son of Ulysses S. Grant and Julia Dent Grant, just turned 49 years old. The second was John Coulter Bates, whose father, Edward Bates, had been the Attorney General in Lincoln's cabinet, as well as an unsuccessful aspirant to the candidacy for president in 1860. A 56-year-old Missourian, Bate, had been a student at Washington University in St. Louis and entered service as an 18-year-old first lieutenant of the 11th U.S. Infantry 1 month after Fort Sumter. Tall, solidly built Bates served in the Army of the Potomac from its beginning to end of the war and participating in every major battle, including was promoted to captain in 1863 and served on staffs of General Hooker and later General Meade at Gettysburg. He was brevetted major in 1864 and lieutenant colonel, colonel, I thought it was colonel, but colonel in 1865 at age 23 for gallant and meritorious services during the fall of Richmond and the surrender at Appomattox. I'm going to have to make it smaller because it's not accurate. Reverting to a captain at war's end, Bates spent most of the next 30 years at various military posts in the West and served in a number of the Indian war campaigns. Like most of his Civil War brethren, he would take nearly double his lifespan to reach his former reverend rank of lieutenant colonel in 1884. When the war in Cuba came, he was appointed to a major general of volunteers, holding a prominent place in the assault on El Caney, developed next to the celebrity politician soldier, Theodore Roosevelt. It was intended that Bates will become a brigade commander in the Philippines, but when he arrived in mid-June, the summer monsoon had imposed a stalemate on operations and his troops had not yet arrived. On July 3rd, Otis cut new orders for Bates and a detailed letter of instruction. You are hereby appointed and constituted an agent on the part of the United States military authorities in the Philippines to discuss, enter into negotiations, and perfect, if possible, a written agreement of character and scope, as hereinafter explained with Sultan of Sulu, which upon approval at these headquarters and confirmation by the Supreme Executive Authority of the United States, will prescribe and control the future relations, social and political, between the United States government and the inhabitants of the Sulu Archipelago. Now, did y'all hear that? So basically, it was a treaty that they were attempting to write. And United States officials sent this guy, Bates, to attempt to get a written agreement that will allude to the fact that in the treaty negotiation, they got action over there. Attempt to persuade them to do that. Otis, like many of the Americans, mistakenly assumed that the Sultan of Sulu was the ruler of all the Moros. He believed that all Bates had to do was gain written acknowledgement and recognition from the Sultan that their prior treaty of 1878 between the Sultanate and Spain was still in effect, and that the kingly prerogatives of Spain, thus abridged by solemn concession, have descended to the United States, and conditions existing at the time of transfer should remain. It was noted that the information supplied by Captain Pratt from Jolo, the Sultan and Principal Datus are laboring under mistaken impression that Spain, upon withdrawing her military forces from the islands, reconveyed sovereignty to them because of the reported Spanish action in placing them in possession of Saasi, accompanied by promises to likewise turn over Jolo. To seal the bargain, Otis stated, the United States will accept the obligations of Spain under the agreement of 1878. In the matter of money's annuities, and in proof of sincerity, you will offer as a present to the Sultan and Datus 10,000 Mexican or 5,000 US. To the treaty, Article 16, Article 16, Treaty of Peace and Friendship. That's where my mind goes. The language of the instructions delegated considerable authority to Bates to assess the situation and arrive at a different document if such, in his estimate, was appropriate, a Bates subject to, quote, approval and ratification by superior authority for accompanying documents gave further background information. Bates discovered upon close reading, however, that one of the documents directly contradicted the assumptions contained in Otis's instructions, likely authored by Charles Denby of the Philippine Commission or derived from his verbal input. It noted that in the summer of 1898, the Sultan had quote, applied to President McKinley for American protection, and that while, quote, Spain under the Paris Treaty had ceded the Jolo Islands to the United States. The rights there are further, the rights there are rather those of, quote, suzerainty rather than sovereignty, notwithstanding the recognition of Spanish sovereignty by the European governments. Suzerainty means in a relationship between two sovereign, although unequal states, whereby the lesser or vassal state cedes certain specific stated political controls, such as control of trade, to the more powerful state, usually in return for some consideration, such as protection from its potential enemies. Okay? Because the Syria, he be talking about vassal states, and now I get what he's talking about. So they got somewhat sovereignty, but they still under control of a more prominent state. But it's not complete like servitude, but some restrictions. Sovereignty means complete control and supreme power and authority over one state, over what has then become merely a political unit or subdivision having only the autonomy granted or allowed it by sovereign power. Otis had apparently not read this memorandum. It undercut a key American assumption that Spain had a valid basis in international law to include the Solo Archipelago in its cession of the Philippines to the United States. It concluded with understatement, hence, quote, the Sultan's request for protection and not annexation is reasonable. The condition of affairs makes the case a delicate one to be handled with fact. So my mind goes to the annexation of Texas and all that. Like when they talk about annexing, that's like really colorable, and now it's now a colorable jurisdiction. So now, like I said, it used to be Mexico, quote unquote Texas, New Mexico, Nevada. All that was Mexico. Before that, it was Califia, under the dominion of Queen Califia. So now it's Texas. It's corporate, right? So that's called an annexation. When the people of that boundary agree to the colonization by force or voluntarily, it's just been annexed. Now everybody got license plates that say Texas on it. License plate that say Nevada. License plate that say California. Right? People bought into that. Right? The memorandum suggests that a better approach should be to negotiate an entirely new treaty, sidestepping and finessing the status of the 1878 treaty, loosely copying the model the British had used in India of recognizing each Rajah as a semi-autonomous ruler under British sovereignty. Right? So even over there, India, right? When you call our brothers that's in Hindustan Indian, that's a creature of the British East India Company, right? Right. So these British gave the Aboriginal people of the land semi-autonomous rulership. Right. The point, leverage is noted, was money. It had been reported by a number of parties, including Captain Pratt, that, quote, the Sultan's income is notoriously deficient, and his desire for American protection is to attract planters to the islands, sell lands, and increase internal trades and imports. Negotiations to focus on, quote, assurance to the Sultan of an income sufficient to support his prestige as the head of an ancient line and a descendant of the Prophet. Bates had the good fortune to be assigned 3 competent junior military officers to assist him. They were Captain Samuel S. Smiley, 15th Infantry, First Lieutenant Horace M. Reeve, 3rd Infantry, both newly arrived in the Philippines, and Dr. Frank S. Barnes, a contract surgeon with the Army, who had arrived with the original expeditionary force the previous summer. All, including Bates, could speak Spanish. Barnes proved the real asset. Prior to volunteering for duty with the Army, Barnes, the ornithologist, as well as physician, have been in the Philippines and the Sulu archipelago twice, and a rarity among Americans. In 1891, he had co-authored a book on Philippine birds with Dean C. Worcester, who by coincidence was one of the commissioners on the Skirherman, or First Philippine Commission. In his mid-30s, Bourne was fluent in Spanish and with a working knowledge of a number of Philippine dialects. The small group was given 1 week to prepare for its departure to Sulu. The members made good use of the time by going to the Spanish archives of Manila for original documents and correspondence rather than taking at face value the summarized information provided. They quickly discovered that whether one termed it suzerainty or sovereignty was almost irrelevant. The Spanish rule of any form over Sulu had been nothing more than a facade. When the actual accounts were examined, the Spanish, unlike the Luzon and the Visayans, had exempted by decree all Muslim subjects from the annual cedula, or head tax, equal to about 75% per family, when it had proven to be uncollectible. The same thing had happened with customs and duties outside trade, and in fact, the Sultan and various datus had regularly imposed their own duties, even though prohibited by the Treaty of 1878. The Spanish had never received income or revenues from the Sulu, or for that matter, from any other Moro area of Mindanao, and have been forced to bear all the expenses of maintaining their garrisons. Furthermore, from the documents and information now gained by Captain Pratt and Jolo, it became obvious that the real substance of the Spanish-Moro relationship has been an accommodation based on wink and nod understandings on the part of both sides. The Moros have permitted the Spanish to appear to be in control, while in turn, the Spanish paid tribute. Interesting. Can you answer this? For the privileged had readily turned their faces whenever the Sultan or Datus ignored the various treaties, particularly when it involved matters of taxation and trade. Some imperialists, this new information jolted Otis, a Harvard-trained attorney, placing him in the uneasy position of realizing the dubious legitimacy of McKinley's inclusion of the land of the Moros within Spain's cession of the Philippine Islands. The easy solution of simply assuming intact the 1878 treaty and Spanish obligations would not cut it. By this time, Otis' relationships and credibility with Washington had become severely strained by his prickly personality, inaccessibility, optimistic reports yet meager results, and an unwinnable battle of words with the ever-growing number of media correspondents who had flocked to Manila to cover the war. It is not surprising, therefore, that Otis did not bother to inform Washington of these latest developments, instead redrafting Bates' orders on his own, hoping the general could pull his chestnuts out of this unexpected fire. In a letter of July 11, 1899, on the eve of Bates' departure for Sulu, Otis greatly modified his instructions. The letter, which was not a model of lucidity, admitted that Spain never renounced nor conceived a definite fixed policy over control of the archipelago. The evidence fixed purpose to maintain a sufficient number of troops in the archipelago to show to Europe that occupation, in fact, which would demonstrate Spanish sovereignty. The undertone of this new instruction and what can be inferred from Bates' notice is that Otis verbally gave Bates loose guidance and expanded authority along the lines of 1, find a way to fix the problem. 2, remember, the real objective is to keep us out of yet another war. 3, I cannot give you any more troops or resources other than what is now in Jolo. And 4, good luck, General. Bates and his small party arrived on Jolo July 16th, accompanied by 2 young freelance members of the press, John F. Bass, a reporter and illustrator, John T. McCutcheon. Following 2 requests to the Sultan for a conference, a delegation consisting of the Raja Muda, the Sultan's older brother and heir apparent to the title, Haji Butu, the Sultan's secretary, and Hajib Murad, the Sultan's political advisor, called upon Bates. Their spokesman, Haji Butu, said they had come to pay their respects to the general and to give the Sultan's apologies for not also appearing, but that he was in the midst of an important religious feast, and that will come as soon as the festivities were over in the 3 or 4 days. But in order to save time, could the general outline the substance of the agreement the United States would like to reach? This would be the pattern of the negotiations from the Sultan's side for the next 2 weeks, with the Sultan avoiding direct contact and working through intermediaries. Both sides were entering negotiations from positions of weakness and need, although neither at first fully comprehended nor appreciated the situation of the opposite side. The Sultanate, as a governing entity, was in bad shape and had been in a steady decline in power and prosperity since the middle of the 19th century. While the Spanish had not been able to assert sovereignty, they had badly crippled the underpinnings of the underlying economy sustaining the political and social structure of Sulu. Sultan Jamal il-Karam II had been on the throne since 1893 and was generally perceived as having little ambition, political drive, or even interest in government. While he was a playboy, his competent and aggressive mother, Sultana Pajayan Inchi Jamila II, wife of Sultan Jamal ul Azam, had been the force behind maneuvering him into power and retained at least a degree of control over him. However, while the Sultana was intelligent and shrewd, by 1899 she was both ailing and aging. A number of the more powerful Datus have been actively undermining the power and control of the Sultanate, although they could never aspire to replace him in the position as, as the legitimacy of the Sultan as a religious leader lay in his proven direct line of descent from the Prophet Muhammad. Both the Sultanate and Bates had to take these Datus into account in any agreement or course of action. The Sulu Sultanate was as almost perfect example of the bad things that happen to states that lose control of their sea lanes, a theory described by the noted American admiral Alfred Dyer Mahan. In Sulu, at mid-century, the technology of the steam engine in the form of a small shallow draft gunboats that could maneuver independently of wind and current spelled the end, or at least the major curtailment, of Sulu's naval power and capability. The substantial improvements and technological advancement in steam-powered vessels and their armaments that took place over the last third of the 9th century would effectively make obsolete every navy in the world, large or small, and dramatically increase the cost of complexity of upgrading to the new level. Wisely, the Sultan's advisors realized that the Sultan could not play this game and that his options for defense had become greatly limited as a result. This was occurring at a time that would later prove to be the zenith of European imperialism, and all were eyeing the former possessions of Spain with interest. To the west were the British in North Borneo, Malaysia, and Singapore, who had a vital interest in assuring that the Sibitu Passage, the only chartered north-south deep water passage to north-south China Sea, would remain open. The Dutch, to the south of Indonesia, were another imperial power, although with tenuous hold over their colonies. To the north lay perhaps the biggest perceived danger, a Christian tag-along-led republic in the making, claiming title to all the Philippines, including Sulu. At large, and prowling the area was a small but modern and powerful German high seas fleet, and the Germans had expressed more than once to Spain an interest in acquiring the Sulu archipelago. In fact, they were already in the process of acquiring Spain's no longer defensible islands to the east of the Philippines, the Carolines, Marianas, and Marshalls. The Japanese and even the Russians were also nosing about Sulu. Across the South China Sea, in Indochina were the French, who, although not seeking new colonies, could doubtless view the disposition of Sulu as important to his interests. In China at this time, all of these powers were moving aggressively to stake out their own spheres of influence. And Sulu had long been a route for the same China trade the great powers were jockeying to dominate. As a result, the American elimination, I just hate phrasing it like that, the United States elimination of Spain's suspect claim to the Zulus, which in a way have provided a shield against predations by other powers, had awkward and potentially volatile international implications. On the other hand, the young Sultan Jamal ul-Karam II had a simpler agenda than his advisors, money. He had been able to travel abroad through pilgrimages to Mecca, on the way seeing and envying the lavish lifestyles enjoyed by the various sultans and rajas of the British Empire. He had taken to wearing European clothes, acquiring European furnishings, and acquired a sizable and costly harem, which itself developed a taste for the better things in life. The wives and concubines had an independent streak of their own. He was anxious about the sudden cutoff in his revenues and income from the Spanish, but also openly sought ways to profit from the situation and improve his cash flow. His adversary would be a factor in the negotiations, but one virtue the Sultanate had was its mature and shrewd advisors, particularly Hajjaj Batu, who were fairly well informed of what was happening in the world at large through their contacts in the Middle East, particularly Turkey. To these advisors and to the Sultana, the key issue was not reasserting the autonomy and independence of the Sultanate, but with whom to throw in their plot. There would be 2 more meetings held at the U.S. garrison compound in Jolo on July 24th and 25th, 1899. At the second meeting, the same gentleman showed up, but again, the Sultan did not make an appearance. Bates was told through the interpreter that the Sultan sends his greetings and begs to be excused because he has got a boil on his neck and another underneath his arm and cannot even put on a coat. But it was further indicated that the Sultan had given his brother, the heir apparent, or Raja Muda, power of attorney, to treat with you. The 2 issues that came to the fore directly dealt with sovereignty. The Sultan's advisors produced a copy of the Treaty of 1878 in the Sulu language, which was markedly different from both Spanish and Jawawi copies that have been found in the Spanish archives in Manila. Their version used the term Sulu Island rather than archipelago. The Raja Muda asserted that Spanish sovereignty had never extended beyond the island of Jolo, also known as Sulu, and that the Spanish garrison stationed on the other islands had only been guests, permitted with the Sultan's kind permission. Further, he asserted that the treaty gave the Spanish the right to set tariffs and collect duties solely on the port of Julu, while admitting the Spanish had collected tariffs and duties on the other islands. They maintained there had been a separate 30-year treaty covering that situation, unknown to the United Statesians, which conveniently expired just the previous year. Therefore, according to Haji Batu, outside the port of Jolo, the Sultan had the right to levy taxes and collect duties. That's the exact verbiage in Article 1, Section 8. Levy. As he was now doing in Sayasi, since the departure of the Spanish. Bates immediately asked to see the original document of the Sultan's version of the Treaty of 1878 and purported customs duty treaty, also dated 1878, for the verification of the copies. gonna stop right here. What page is that? 50? Okay. All right. So, has everybody read Moore's Tactical?
Or what?
Tactical?
Not besides that one.
Oh, it's a bunch right here. If y'all, what we read in here, what we learned is pretty.
You read it?
Hey, who wrote that?
I started, yeah, who wrote that?
Who wrote that?
I wrote it. Mafia. Brother Mafia wrote that. So you have read it, right? Okay. So, can you kind of summarize the history and put the proper perspective on who the Slavs were in 13 colonies? Can you explain how they got here, etc.? And just bring us up to this point.
From the book or from my own words?
From the book, but in your own words. Like the sequence of events. You know, how to,
So how they got here?
Yeah.
Coming from the British, they came here and they created the colonies. And they wrote the Articles of Confederation.
but how did the colonies get established?
I see it.
All right.
Specifically,
Nobody want to take a guess?
If we help.
Anywhere they call you?
Yeah, Sultan, right?
Like, we told them that, like, you guys have to, yeah, get established.
We basically told them to get their people together.
Right.
Get more organized. And blah, blah,
Yeah.
That was later with the Articles of Confederation. But how did,
okay, all right.
by this not being Europe, how did European colonies get established? French colonies, Dutch colonies, British colonies, right? New Orleans was a French colony, right? Right? So how did they become French colonies, British colonies? Britain, France, Dutch, Netherlands. How are these colonies directed to specific European nations on American soil? These colonies under the jurisdiction of a certain king or queen, right? How did that come to be?
Yeah, they were slaves to certain people, like Irish and who else?
Right. So
And they got organized. They got competent.
wait, that's later in the game. We just talk about how they got here.
Yeah, they were slave labor.
Right. Yeah, yes. Yeah. That's how they got here. Now,
You talking about how they come up with the colonies?
yeah, how did they arrive? Yeah, exactly. How did the establishment of the colonies?
Was they abandoned by them over there?
No, they had to get out of here.
No, they said.
Yeah, they got kicked out.
Yeah, it was abandoned.
They got exiled. Abandoned is leaving your shit.
Yeah.
They kicked them out of, you know.
Now, but it was an exile, but they were still subject to pay taxes.
Right.
It was that type of exile. So the prisons, we had prisons, we had indentured servitude, we had people picking cotton. These people picking cotton were Slavic, British, English, Irish, Albions, not us, on these colonies. Now, the people populating these colonies, now the inception of the colonies before they even got populated with people, that was based on a negotiation for spice. They might have metal, etc. It was a trade situation. And when we established that, they asked, King James, Queen Elizabeth, whoever was like, we got vagabonds, we got serfs, we got people that just running them up. Can they sit in prison in those colonies as well as do work? These people at the time before they declared their independence, July 4th and all that, they were British subjects, English subjects, French subjects. Couple time go by, right? They're like, why we gotta pay taxes to y'all? We way over here. So they start doing things like throwing the tea off the boat, Boston Tea Party, but painting their faces black before they do it to make it seem like we did it.
The European colonies were established based on the relationship with the reigning Sultan of Morocco and the prospective crowns of the time. Says, for example, the Virginia Commonwealth, an English colony, was established based on the diplomatic relations with Abu Faiz Abdullah, Emperor of Morocco, and King James, King of England. The population of these colonies were at the time considered, like you just said, enslaved Slavs, and were considered vagabonds, thieves, and scum of the respective nations. They would paint their faces black, and like you just said, toss teeth over the ships and do all those things. So basically, they were formed on the agreements between the people who took them in the Sultan and the king who took them.
No. So these were instructions from their crown to keep it to King Henry VIII, Queen Elizabeth, King James the first, second, third. These people were like, y'all gotta pay taxes. Y'all are subjects. Y'all just in prison over there because the only reason y'all over there because we got a treaty with the Sultan of Morocco. You know what I mean? So later in the game, these European subjects got frustrated. And, like we're done with this, right? So if you look up the intolerable acts, you'll see, the intolerable acts, you'll see they attempted to discipline the subjects for tossing the tea. You know what I mean? So based on that, July 4th, they declare their independence for all those reasons. Once they break away from their crown, they are no longer looked at as English subjects, right? Because only way you're a subject to a sovereign, that means you're connected to a sovereign crown, right? Once this body of your Albions disconnected, they're not part of an intact government no more. They're not intact to the British Empire. They're not intact with nothing that's recognizable international law now. They're just refugees. Now, at that point, they come to us. Like, look, what can we do? We ain't feeling that. How they running stuff over there. You know what I mean? So, all right, y'all gotta organize yourself. Now that's where the organization comes. They organize themselves, First Continental Congress, Second Continental Congress. During this transition, that's when you get the first president, the brother. John Hanson. Yeah, John Hanson, Benjamin Banneker Bay. These are all brothers, and they was their job was to teach these Albions on our land the high science, because these are he was a John Hanson. He spoke under the seal, the Great Seal. He didn't speak under the flag, under the Roman bird, like that you see now, that most people speak under. You know what I'm saying? So his position was to teach them high science, get them up to speed. You know what I mean? So the secret societies that came later, it really was based on knowledge that we gave them. But then when it got ugly, after they killed Lincoln and all that type of stuff, a lot of stuff, you know what I mean? They preserved the knowledge. So we pretty much got a clear understanding on that. Everybody pretty clear on that now? Up until that point? So now that we're at Articles of Confederation, Treaty of Peace and Friendship. Then the Constitution. Everybody pretty much got that?
You got a picture of John Hanson on the podium, like what you said? I already seen it.
Yeah, I seen it. Before George Washington. George Washington was the ninth president. So these first 8, that's what we're doing. All, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, all Moors. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that knowing that history and how that historical account went down, that assists us in the competency too. Because you could get hit with a question on, so you say you want slaves? So you saying slavery never happened? I be getting people that talk like that, like, no, not in the context of how you looking at it, not how you looking at it, no. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, prisoners of war, but the slave is like a nationality, right? It's, you know what I'm saying? I'm watching the Olympics right now. The Czechoslovakia, they still, that's a nationality, you know what I'm saying? They in the Olympics right now playing ball. You know what I'm saying? So the Slavic, right? So yeah, so knowing that is key. And especially when you first come into this information, you know. So I'm gonna do some mocks. I'm gonna do a mock situation. I'm gonna do a mock situation both as if you are challenging jurisdiction in court, and I'm gonna do a mock as if you get pulled over by a cop, something like that, traffic or something. Thousand miles a year, license and registration.
What was the reason for your stop?
You appear to have these plates that I'm not familiar with. It says Morocco on them, Tazamaji. I'm not familiar.
I'm not under your jurisdiction, I'm a more.
Any type of documentation or laws.
The consular notification manual is instructions stating you more strictly there how you deal with them. Are you familiar with them?
I've never heard of that.
I have it right here. This is the consular notification access manual for all federal, state, and local law enforcement on how to deal with foreign nationals, anybody that's not in the United States.
Okay. Well, have a good day. I never heard of that.
Oh, you should. You're quite a couple of.
All right. Pretty good. Now, I can give you the information. You see it? So that was good. You know, I'm gonna critique after. I'm gonna give everybody just a chance to go at bat, and we'll critique after versus critiquing every situation. For the matter of Ebony Dozier, we're in court now.
I'm here, I'm in the matter, I'm here for the matter of Ebony Dozier.
So who are you?
I'm the father of my
So what's your? Are you?
Here in the matter of Ebony Dozier.
Are you're representing Ebony Dozier?
Yes.
You're the attorney?
No, I'm consul.
You're consul for Ebony Dozier?
No, wait, no. I don't want to say that. I don't want to say anything wrong. No.
Who are you here for? Why are you? Why are you here?
It doesn't matter that we do it, but I'm how to mark it down. Here in the matter.
Well, I'm looking for Ebony Dozier. I don't.
I'm not yet.
Well, I'm gonna go to the next case. All right. There's nothing wrong. This is just it's just a gauge where we're at. That's all. We want to see where we're at. All right. So I'm gonna go this way. It doesn't matter. Even if you don't know anything, just whatever you think you know. Because we're gonna do this again in a couple weeks. And you're gonna be able to gauge your growth. All right. License and registration. Um, tail light out. Yeah, pursuant to vehicle code 9.68, it makes it illegal to drive without both your tail lights intact. No, no. Well, I just told you you violated a vehicle code violation. So, do you have any documentation to substantiate these claims? What's it called? What's the function of that? Why should I be knowing about that? So there you go. So now once you take them there, treaty. You know what I'm saying? I'm just, I'm not the cop no more. I'm just talking to you regularly. So I'm just letting you know, once you take them there, you open the door up to, because the language is in there, it says any treaties that one may have with these governments, they're binding agreements. So that's kind of, once you get polished, you're going to be saying it like that. And then we have a treaty, Morocco, United States. So this is the law of the land, pursuant to Article 6. You take an oath. You know what I mean? I forgot her name. License and registration. You have Moroccan plates, and this is, you know, you need to be registered with DMV to travel in the state of California. Yes, vehicle code X97 states you need to have a California license plate traveling to the state of California. License and registration.
Right?
That's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Like I say, in a couple of weeks we'll, you know. Yeah. I'm Maru. License and registration. You have these plates that I'm not familiar with, and it's a tail light out. Yeah, pursuant to vehicle code X97, you need plates from California, and both license plates both tail lights need to be intact.
California, right?
No, California is what you're traveling, and it's a privilege, by the way. DMV, it's a privilege. You know what I mean? Are you licensed? Where's your driver's license? Matter of fact, let me see that. You don't need a license? What are you basing this on? You have any documentation? What are you referring to? Okay. Okay. Never heard of that. Let me check that out. You have a copy of that?
Islam.
Interesting.
according to Sharon versus Covenant, must be a crime.
Why is that? Why? How is that something that I have to abide by? You said the rights of indigenous people? That's something I have to abide by?
No, you don't practice with us.
Do you have any ID to state who you are? Like, that's,
Nationality card trumps the identification.
where are you getting this from? Because I'm seeing these guys just no plates.
DOJ 1508.
You got a copy of that? You got a copy of that?
You're supposed to know about this. DOJ is a web.
Pretty good, pretty good, pretty good. License and registration?
Pursuant to criminal research manual 1508 and absence of a nationality card, birth certificate, license, and social driver's license and social security card can be used in absence of a nationality card. So it's commonly accepted, but it's not identification.
You got a
So
copy?
no, I don't have it.
Do you have a copy of what you're saying talking about right now?
I have a nationality card, but I also have a criminal resource manual 1508. I mean, a criminal resource, council notification and access manual. Council notification and access manual for you that you should know or for you to interface with international or pre-national.
So you're saying the first law covers the ID?
I'm saying because of the first law, I don't need a driver's license, birth certificate, or a driver's license because I have a nationality card, which trumps all three of those.
Okay, okay. And what's that again? What was that law? So I can write it down?
Criminal resource manual 1508.
From Department of Justice?
Yeah. It also says in the Council Notification and Access Manual that the United States complies with its legal obligations to such governments. These legal obligations arise primarily from treaties which form part of the supreme law of the land under Article 4 of the Constitution. The instructions and guidance contained in this manual must be followed by all federal, state, and local government officials, whether law enforcement, judicial, or other, insofar as they pertain to foreign nationals subject to the official's authority or to matters within the official's competence. Need I say more?
So you have a treaty. Where's the treaty that you have with the United States?
It's called the Treaty of Peace and Friendship between the Sultan of Morocco between 1786. George, treaty, a letter from George Washington to our Sultan.
Pretty good, pretty good. It's just Islam stuff, man. So don't mix up the letter to George Washington. I mean, the letter from George Washington to the Sultan. Don't mix that up with the treaty. That's two separate documents. But you can bring up in that letter, it references the treaty and how calling our Sultan Your Majesty, and we have nothing to offer, but our body politic will soon become industrious. We have nothing, no navy, nothing. We can offer people that's willing to work, right? So now, why I highlight that is because that's the same time frame that they claim to be shipping us off boats en masse. So which, you know what I mean? This conflicts. They didn't even have a navy, but they shipping us in boats en masse, cross Atlantic slave trade. You know what I mean? Just a little bit of scholarship with debunk. You know what I mean? Put holes in that. But yeah, no, you did excellent job, man. License and registration, sir.
License and registration. I have your name, officer, what's the
These plates, no tags. I mean, and I did an ID. I can't even look this up on my computer.
have your ID and your name and badge and your dedication and authority.
So you have no ID.
I don't need ID. Do you have a probable cause or some reason? SAS or RAS?
Well, pursuant to California Vehicle Code X97, California plates.
If you have any singular articulable fact or reasonable articulable suspicion, there's no crime or any party violating my oath right now, my right. Violating your oath and violating my rights.
My oath? What about
Both
you?
of those.
To what?
Protect the Constitution and the people.
So what you're talking about with the injured party, where are you getting this? That's part of my oath?
As according to U.S. United States Code of Constitution, no ignorance of the law is no excuse. Cause any more problems, I might have to call your what is it? Supervisor down here. You get your supervisor down here so we can talk it out. And that's our old window up. Staff, what is it? Shift supervisor. I need your shift supervisor. If you don't know these laws, I need your shift supervisor because you're about to violate your rights right now, and then I'm gonna put a lien in the bond. You might want to do that. You might want to talk to somebody higher.
All right. License registration. These are foreign plates that I'm not used to seeing. You're in the state of California, you need California plates. Are you coming from somewhere foreign? If you've been here longer than 20. Yes, pursuant to Vehicle Code 698, you need California plates and a driver's license. Matter of fact, let me see that. Let me see driver's license and registration before we continue this dialogue.
But are you familiar with Postal Notification Act?
No, what is that?
Section for federal, state, and local law enforcement and other officials regarding foreign nationals and
So what's that got to do with? Okay. So
there's no crime being committed.
treaty? You have a treaty? How does this apply to you? How does this manual apply to you? So basically, you're saying if there's no treaty violation, there's no crime. What happened last night? I learned something new today. Or there. License registration. The players, you have Moroccan plates, no tags. I'm gonna need to have to identify you. I try to look something up in my computer with your plates, nothing's coming up. I need to know who you are. Car could be stolen, anything. We just need to make sure that everything's proper, Well, I hear what you're saying. Let's get a license about you. What type of ID do you have? A license. Why is that? These type of laws, what is this pursuant to? Are you just making this up, or?
Have a license and go that route. Yeah.
So you saying that liberty can't be converted into a tax or a crime? What did you say? Is this case law? What are you referencing?
This case law.
So that's all good. You know what I mean? Like we just, you know what I mean? So now you know we got kind of
Right can be converted into a privilege if U.S. would, or is there somebody versus somebody?
no, we can
The state cannot convert a right into a privilege.
and make it into tax. Okay. I think it's Sheffield versus something. Okay, so that's Murdoch versus Penn. Murdoch versus Penn. So no state. Y'all might want to write this down. What's her name?
Flower.
18. So this is a specific case law that he was alluding to. So no state may convert any secured liberty into a privilege and issue a license and fee to it. That's Murdoch versus Penn. Murdoch,
versus Penn.
Muduk, actually. Is it Muduk? It's Muduk, actually. It's M-U-D-O-O-K.
No state.
No state may convert any secured liberty into a privilege and issue a license and a fee for it. Mudok versus Penn. That's M-U-D-O-O-K versus Penn. Mudok. So M-U-D-O-O-K versus Penn. P-E-N-N. Okay. Zariah. Zariah Bay. License and registration. I see Moroccan plates and a missing tail light. Pursuant to vehicle code 698, you need California plates to travel to the state of California, and it's a privilege, so you need a license as well. So do you have that too? I'm not familiar with that. What's that pertaining to?
I think you should call your supervisor, your chair, since you are not familiar. I am reporting for the record. You stated that you're not
That's interesting. I learned something new here. I mean, just respectfully, I want to know what the manual is about. You know, I'm just, can you educate me?
She already told you once.
Guys.
I would like to be on my way, or you can call your supervisor. This is the situation that you were incompetent in law.
Have a good day. All right, license registration. Well, you know it's a crime to travel in the state of California with no license.
And your CRM, which is criminal those identifications are not valid constitutional identifications. My nationality card right here. And I have to enough to continue this conversation. I asked the supervisor.
No, we don't need to go that far. Don't need to bring my supervisor. You know, I'm just curious. You know, somebody called and you fit the description, but clearly you're clearly not the person. You have a good day. You have a good day. License and registration.
May I ask why?
Broken tail light. Someone need, pursuant to the vehicle code 789, it definitely is.
Well, I'd like to inform you that I'm not in that jurisdiction because I am indigenous Moorish American. Yeah.
I've never heard, it's the first day I've ever heard of a Moorish American. What'd you say that was?
Wow, how long have you been working? Yeah, indigenous Moorish American. But yeah, I fall under a different jurisdiction, I'm not a U.S. citizen, which means that I do not need to show you license registration.
Do you have any law, here you go. That's right. Do you have any paperwork to substantiate your point? Any laws or
Yeah, I can keep it.
what's that?
Um,
I just see a white paper with blue lines.
yeah.
Nah,
I mean, I don't know the name. But,
that's fine. That's fine. No, that's a good good start. I know you do. License and registration.
Just like she probably would.
I need to make sure everybody is safe on the road to California. I tried to look up your plates and I can't put nothing up on my computer. Oh, so you're legally here? Do you have any green card? What type of documentation do you have? So just give us an idea, kind of like where we at, right? So, you know what I mean? So,
That's playing around with each other. The heat and
yeah,
anxiety and everything.
when it's the uniform and the gun on the hip and the badge,
And they really mean what they
you gotta,
saying.
you gotta,
Just playing like
you know what I'm saying? You gotta know what you're talking about.
But, and that, yeah.
It's an ocean concept. And it's saying that the tree is bringing all the land. So you might find the luck, if you show them, like, or the court, it's chasing all the asking for it. You like, no, can't run through this, like, that's how I said, not the numbers first.
That's for what we think
But once again, like once y'all read the book, y'all gonna see it's a orderly fashion. The manual sets the jurisdiction, a non-US citizen, right? It also directs into Article 6, talks about they take an oath to uphold the whole Constitution and treaties of the law of the land. That's all Article 6, right? And once you establish that, you go to Article 4 of the Constitution. It gives full faith and credit on any case law, any public records, public acts from a state. So now that we know that those things are law, we utilize the case law we just read. You know what I mean? All this case law has full faith and credit, right? So it was already ruled upon, right? So when we say, like the vehicle code, those are statutes and ordinances, right? So it's already case law now. Now we know have full faith and credit. Article 4, Section 1. That statutes which would deprive a citizen of rights of person or property without a regular trial, according to the course of uses of common law Constitution, right, should not be the law of the land. And that's Hope versus Henderson. So that's an example of when we say full faith and credit. That's the language of Article 4, Section 1. They give full faith and credit to case law. So any case law that is applying to your situation, you can utilize it because it's already a precedent that's been laid down that it's already been ruled upon. I don't need license. It's already been ruled upon. I don't need license plate. I don't gotta have nothing on my car. Really? So that's kind of how you approach it like that. You know what I mean? So this is a common law handbook. It's like $5. You can buy it on Amazon. It got all the case laws you need pursuant to traffic, plates, licenses, the jurisdiction, the court, and all that stuff. Due process, whatever. Right there for you. So we all situated for feeding the homeless next week, right? We all. Okay, now. Okay, who live? Y'all both live in Long Beach, right? Is that park right there where you get off the freeway? I believe it's Atlantic. Make a left. How is that? Sorry. Atlantic's on Atlantic, yeah. There's homeless people up there? Where the homeless be at?
Downtown at the shelter.
So
Downtown.
now we don't want it to be like too overwhelming. We just want to set up and have free food and have like some homeless people come. Yeah. But not like no Skid Row type. We don't want to get too overwhelming. So Sunday from 11, 12, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it'd be pretty cool. No, so somebody gonna make some chili, or I think it's chili, right? We decided to chili, yeah. So we'll get some styrofoam cups. Pour the chili in the styrofoam cups. Maybe whatever, a spoon, whatever, the scooper. Kind of just pass them out. Yeah. Okay, so we got make a chili, rice. I guess some styrofoam cups, I guess, about 50 of them or whatever. We need a couple of setup tables. Tables. Got the cups. Okay. Okay. Okay, so we just yeah, bottle water. Water. So so now what about, do we have tables? Did we say we got tables? It's two we can set up. So I guess one for the food, one for the clothes. Kusalam. Okay. So yeah, we just gonna just meet up there. Like, so we won't even come here. We're gonna go straight. I guess we can do that. I guess we I guess we can rendezvous here and then go to I guess if you want to, as many people can ride together as possible or whatever. Yep. Yeah.
So I'll still bring my chairs, but I don't know. Is that something y'all want to think about? We're gonna be standing, so somebody might want to bring a chair. You know what I mean? So that's it. We're just waiting on chief of police, right? Did they give a timeline or what's the timeline? I mean, you can give it like a week or two, and then you can just go straight to the mayor. You know what I mean? With the same thing. A new one? Oh, yeah. They'll come and just leave. It'll be like walk out. So on two separate occasions, just one police came with him, right? Then they just leave. So look, I mean, like I said, if they leaving like that, they know. It ain't too much nothing. You know what I mean? They came and left twice. You know? You know what I mean? Shit. Nothing they ain't trying to mess with it. Look like. Huh? Yeah. That's what I'm saying. They're not even after you say what you say, they leaving, right? Pretty much. Yes, you know, all this on the record though. All this is they talking amongst themselves. You know what I mean? And I'm pretty sure the affidavit with the Ortiz or Diaz. Now this situation, I'm pretty sure it's like, you know what I mean? I would imagine. Yeah. But anybody else got any just questions, concerns?
I think we already did it, right?
Oh, I don't think you were here when we did
Yeah,
it.
we did it last.
Oh yeah, we did that.
Oh, for the third party,
Oh, you're talking about the federal?
Oh, not yet.
No, that's different. That's different. Yeah, I waited for Juju. She didn't call me back. I wanted to talk with her about that because I've been in a federal court. I've never seen what she's talking about. But yeah, essentially, yeah, that would be something that we could do. What else?
anybody wants to go, I have money back there. 89 or something. round trip. Delta. Anybody actually wants to go be with it,
So,
Where and where?
what's the ninth?
August 9th in Massachusetts,
Massachusetts,
Boston, where they get the khakis.
Rhode Island, right? Rhode Island.
Boston?
Oh no, there's Boston.
Massachusetts.
I know you would.
Yeah, I would.
I didn't know. to, no, I wish I could.
Yeah.
But they definitely need, you know, I don't know, could you still do the, passes or, for Massachusetts? I mean, regularly flying that way.
With the bus passes, are they like standby?
It's standard, but I mean, I was trying to have like, like, internally, that I have to, I still. Like, okay, take these, one of these flights, let me get on, and you're ready.
And who would I need to like secure the flight by?
You can do it same day.
Okay,
Do it same day.
okay.
But in
And the price may change or it'll stay.
Um, Other than that, it was just the curriculum that we didn't figure out a day.
curriculum, the combat class on 15th. So that's the week after.
How long is cited here?
Here, 12:30 to,
Cool.
3.
Okay.
$1 for everybody over the age of 15.
Okay.
So that awards, if I'm not going to start at 30 hours.
Okay.
Help whoever.
Okay.
What is that?
I was combat class.
What day?
15.
Should we close out?
Yeah, you don't say I'm broke. You say I'm broke. She brings up the spirit, huh?
I'm gonna buy the book too.
I'll let you know when I got it.
Oh, that's all right.
Oh, you get there and see
She
it.
bought them for me. I'm not sure what she's doing.
The song.
Um,
You got it.
flowers.
I was thinking of change, so
How much is it?
this is 65, I think.
What you doing with the books?
$15, and anything above that is just donation to the house.
So,
Yeah, that's $20. I need to check it.
I think she got.
Cash out, that's what you. I want to. I need that actually like. Yeah, you can cash out, but. Okay.
All right.
Oh, you
20, yes.
We got change.
And you said 20, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna give. You got 20.
Ah, no, it's pretty bad. It's on the house.
Peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, my salvation, by night and by day. Who is on the prophet. Amen.
real quick statement.
And if your phone has a smile, or like if your phone is voice, you can, any phone is voice less.
You got to touch your newspaper.
Cheese or smile. Put it in here. That light. Her forehead right here is black.
Yo, side, go over there. You know, have to make it oh, yeah, you did a good picture last time. Are we in the middle? Is everybody kind of like in the middle?
My autograph, man. I need an autograph.
Oh, you gonna find